and welcome. You're watching Head to Head. I'm Antonina Antosha with UATV. U.S. President Donald Trump recognized Israeli sovereignty of the Golan Heights in an election boost for visiting Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. How could this change the course of the upcoming parliamentary elections in Israel? To discuss this, we welcome to our studio today Kateryna Odarchenko. She's a political observer. Helen, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, good afternoon.
So let's talk about the fact that President Donald Trump actually recognized the sovereignty of Israel and that Israel has the right, to the territory of Golan Heights. Could you comment?
Yeah, for sure. You know that for one of the first visiting of Donald Trump, it's visiting to Bibi or Mr. Netanyahu to Israel, and of course, you know that family of Trump, they also Jews, so that's why partnerships with Israel and cooperation with Israel have two parts. First, it's a strategic partnership because now U.S. hadn't this hegemony by Brzezinski, and power of United States not so strong like in periods of Cold War and so on and so forth. And now they have two problems. First problem, it's a stable situation in territory of Israel, in Gaza sector, and also influence to this territory. And you know that from a period of 60 years of last century, U.S. in United Union and in other upper government organizations, they support Israel. And that's why this position of Trump, it's not secret and not new for world. And we saw that also Trump move embassy of United States to Jerusalem, and it's a very strategic position of all political parties in Israel that it's the right solution. What we have now, I were in Knesset when it's the last session of Knesset. It's we're on this new year in Ukraine, and Israel members of parliament said that party Likud, it's a quite small party with Lieberman as leader. It's mostly interesting party because many members of this party, it's repatriants or people who move from Russia, from Ukraine, and who use Russian language in Israel. It's more than 1 million people in Israel. They use Russian or Ukrainian language in their life. And Lieberman were one of initiator of problems in parliament, of coalition problems, and that's why parliamentary elections start earlier than it must be. And of course, and of course, Netanyahu have many problems in this period because case against him start also in this period. It were cases about free political advertising to Netanyahu, and it's were cases about his fees and also about financing of his political force. And that's why this Netanyahu has good relationships with Trump, and that's why this case and this territory solution, it's will be argument for Netanyahu and for his political party Likud, who is now on polls, one of the leader in this parliamentary campaign.
Well, first of all, here we should mention that the parliamentary elections in Israel are set to happen on April 9th.
In April,
okay, on April 9th, if I'm not mistaken. And yes, the fact that the U.S. President Donald Trump has recognized the sovereignty of Israeli, and the fact that Benjamin Netanyahu is so eager to push his party into the parliament, those are all messages to the international community. How effective could those messages be?
I think that it's quite a right solution, because U.S. support also in Israel, also in question of weapon support, also in question of mutual army education, and also in vector of security. And it's not only support idea on Israel, and idea of existence country of Jews. It's quite a philosophy question, but it's also support of stable situation in Middle East, and on influence United States to the most powerful country in economy point, and also in, of course, security point. And that's why this solution to support Netanyahu and to support Israel against Syria in this question, it's also important marker to stable influence of United States in Middle East, and to stable position also against Russia, because Russia has...
Exactly, that's what I wanted to ask. So what kind of message does this send to Russia and the Kremlin leader Vladimir Putin?
It's the best message, because in Damascus and in Syria at all, Vladimir Putin has huge influence, and all migration policy and all refugee problem, it's also born in Syrian conflict, because more than 5 million people move from this territory to territory of European Union, Canada and United States. And that's why it's I think that pre-existed position of Donald Trump, and its logical way, first it's Jerusalem as capital, like pre-message to international community, and so its position also to Palestine. And the second position, its position that Putin, it's you can't do later your policy in Damascus, because this policy of supporting authoritarian regime in Damascus and in Syria, it can be the same like support separatists in our territory. It's the same
so
mechanism.
If we're talking about Donald Trump sending messages to Vladimir Putin about his policies in Syria, clearly that Vladimir Putin is the leader of the aggressor country that is still, for the 5th consecutive year, attacking Ukraine. So what was this move, what kind of a position of Donald Trump towards the situation in Ukraine and its and the presence of Russian hybrid forces in Ukraine? What kind of message does it send to the international arena on that one?
Situation in Ukraine, it's not same like in Syria, because on every press conference Vladimir Putin said that, yeah, we really support the regime in Syria, and we as Russians and as Russian power said that this authoritarian regime of Assad, it's okay, it's right policy, and it's his directly position. Then in like directly position in Crimea, for example, they said that, oh yeah, it's a real referendum and it's now our territory. And situation on Donetsk and Lugansk region, it's not the same, because he said that, oh, it's Ukrainian separatists, but really it's, of course, people who support by Russia. But Putin hasn't some conferences or some positions that, yeah, it's my people. And that's why he used some international law to be peacemaker in this in this situation, like also peacemaker in Syria. But in Syria he said to words that I support.
Own weird way.
Yeah. In his weird way. It's of course. But really situation of in Middle East, it's also very hard because people really believe in differences in religion ways. And that's why in Ukraine we have weird conflict, not natural conflict, and not also deep conflict. Because, of course, mostly of Ukrainian people, they understand they are as Ukrainians. Yeah, of course they afraid guns, of course they afraid weapon conflict, but they don't hate each other because of language or because of religion. And in Syria and in some Middle East countries, in conflict between Palestine and Israel, it's more deeper in psychological way conflict, and that's why it's easier for Putin also support this conflict and also support authoritarian regime of Assad. But it's good news for us that sanction against Russia connect with Ukrainian question, and also the most valuable point is of course Syrian question, because it's point of destabilization all world order, and you see that migration and refugee problem was a based problem in Brexit, in Euroscepticism as a point in maybe new European Parliament and other global process.
The results of the parliamentary elections in Israel, could they, either way, could they have any effect on the whole situation on the international arena right now?
I think that parliamentary elections now move in their way. Of course, we have a problem in Tel Aviv with rockets, and mostly people in Israel were very afraid of this act in Tel Aviv, and of course this point of American position, it's not end of the story, it's only start of the story. And of course it's connect with the next campaign of Trump, because he has very influential inner opposition and not very good situation with ratings on this point, on equator of his political power. And that's why I think that position on Israel territories and position also on Jerusalem as international capital of Israel, of its start from embassy question, of also position of Trump to move embassy. It's all only start to finally solve Israel-Palestine situation and finally solve, of course, Israel-Syrian situation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was Kateryna Odarchenko. She's a political observer. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned with UATV for the rest.